Clara had measured her life in the quiet agonies of unrequited love for 2 years, for months and 12 days. It was a precise, painful calculus known only to her, a secret timeline marked not by calendar dates, but by the moments her heart fractured and knit itself back together, always a little weaker, a little more scarred. The object of this devotion, Maya, was currently sprawled on their shared living room rug, detailing the latest transgression of her boyfriend, Liam, with the casual despair of someone who had grown accustomed to disappointment. Each word Maya spoke was a small, sharp stone thrown against the fragile glass of Clara's composure. "He just doesn't listen," Maya said, her voice muffled by the plush carpet. She rolled onto her back, staring at the ceiling as if it held the answers to the universe, or at least to her perpetually unsatisfying relationship. "It's like I'm speaking a different language. I talk about wanting to go to that little cabin upstate, just for a weekend, to see the leaves change. And he hears, let's invite Mark and Sarah and make it a whole thing. It's not a thing. It was supposed to be our thing." Clara sat on the sofa, a book open in her lap, though she hadn't turned a page in half an hour. She made a soft, sympathetic noise, a sound she had perfected over the years. It was the sound of a supportive friend, the sound of a safe harbor, the sound of a complete and utter lie. Inside, a familiar ache bloomed in her chest, a dull, throbbing pain that had become as much a part of her as the rhythm of her own breathing. She wanted to be the one to take Maya to a cabin. She wanted to watch the firelight dance in Maya's dark eyes, to wake up to the sight of her hair fanned out across a pillow, smelling of wood smoke and pine. "He means well, I guess," Maya sighed, a concession that sounded more like an excuse she was trying to sell to herself. "Does he?" The question slipped out, sharper than Clara intended. She bit her lip, the book in her hands suddenly feeling heavy. Maya turned her head, her brow furrowed slightly. "What do you mean?" Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. She backpedaled, smoothing over the crack in her carefully constructed facade. "I just meaning well and doing well are two different things, right? It feels like you're the only one putting in the effort to bridge that gap." It was the truth, but a sanitized version of it. The real truth was a roaring inferno she kept locked deep inside. "He doesn't deserve you. He doesn't see you. I see you." Maya considered this, her gaze softening. "You always know what to say." She pushed herself up into a sitting position, her knees drawn to her chest. The lamplight caught the gold flecks in her brown eyes, turning them into tiny, flickering constellations. Clara's breath caught in her throat. It was these small, unguarded moments that undid her, the glimpses of the real Maya that Liam seemed so determined to overlook. "I just listen," Clara murmured, which was another half-truth. She didn't just listen, she absorbed. She collected every one of Maya's frustrations, her quiet hopes, her fleeting joys, and stored them away like precious jewels. She knew Maya better than Maya knew herself, and certainly better than Liam ever would. She knew that Maya hated the taste of cilantro, that she hummed off-key when she was concentrating, that she had a tiny scar above her left eyebrow from a childhood fall, a scar Clara had an almost unbearable urge to trace with her fingertip. "Well, you're better at it than he is," Maya said with a sad little smile. She stood up, stretching like a cat, her silhouette framed against the window that looked out onto the glittering, indifferent city. "I think I'm just going to go to bed. I'm tired of thinking about it." "Okay," Clara said, her voice barely a whisper. "Sleep well." Maya padded out of the room, and the space she left behind felt cavernous and cold. The air, which moments before had been charged with her presence, her scent of vanilla and lavender, now felt thin and empty. Clara closed her book, the words on the page meaningless squiggles. She was the supportive friend, the confidant, the ghost in her own love story, watching from the wings as the lead actress stumbled through a badly written play with the wrong leading man. The ache in her chest sharpened into a knife's twist. 2 years, 4 months, and 12 days. And the counting continued, each second a silent testament to her own cowardice. She was so afraid of losing the friendship that she was willing to suffocate herself in the process, to live in this stasis of quiet, unending longing. She wondered, as she often did in these lonely moments after Maya had retreated to her own room, if there would ever come a day when the counting would finally stop. The fight was worse this time. Clara knew it the moment the front door slammed open, rattling the cheap prints on the hallway wall. Maya stumbled in, not with anger, but with a chilling, hollowed-out silence. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and glassy with unshed tears. She looked like a ship that had been battered by a storm, sails torn, rudder broken, drifting aimlessly toward the nearest shore. That shore, as it so often was Clara. Without a word, Maya collapsed onto the sofa, curling into a tight ball as if to physically hold herself together. Clara was by her side in an instant, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. She didn't ask what happened. She knew. It was always Liam. It was always the same crushing weight of not being seen, not being heard, not being truly valued. She knelt on the floor beside the couch and gently, tentatively, reached out to smooth a stray strand of hair from Maya's cheek. The touch was electric, a jolt of everything she felt and couldn't say. For a moment, she thought Maya would flinch away, but instead, she leaned into the touch, a broken sob finally escaping her lips. The sound tore through Clara's soul. "He forgot," Maya whispered, her voice cracking. "Our anniversary. He completely forgot. He made plans to go watch the game with his friends." She let out a humorless, watery laugh. "He told me I was overreacting. That it's just a day." Clara's hand stilled on Maya's hair. Rage, cold and sharp, coiled in her stomach. It wasn't just a day. It was the day Maya had circled on their kitchen calendar with a red heart 3 weeks ago. It was the day she had bought a new dress for, a soft, green linen one that made her eyes look like a forest after the rain. It was the day she had been quietly, hopefully looking forward to, a chance for things to feel right again. And he had crushed it with his careless indifference. "It's not just a day," Clara said, her voice low and fierce. "It was important to you. That makes it important." That was all it took. The dam broke. Maya's body shook with sobs, deep, ragged gasps for air that seemed to be pulled from the very depths of her. Clara didn't hesitate. She shifted onto the sofa, pulling Maya into her arms, holding her tightly as she cried. Maya buried her face in the crook of Clara's neck, her tears soaking the collar of Clara's shirt, and Clara just held on, rocking her gently, whispering meaningless, soothing sounds. She breathed in the familiar scent of Maya's shampoo, the vanilla and lavender now mingled with the salt of her tears, and felt a fierce, protective love that was so potent it was painful. She was a harbor, yes, but she was also a fortress, and in that moment, she wished she could build walls around Maya so high that no one, especially not Liam, could ever hurt her again. They stayed like that for a long time, long after the tears had subsided into hiccuping breaths and a weary silence. The city lights began to blur outside the window, the sounds of traffic fading into a distant hum. Maya didn't move, her body pliant and heavy in Clara's arms. It felt so right, so terrifyingly, beautifully right, to be holding her like this. It was a poison and a cure all at once. Every second was a sweet torment, a taste of a world she couldn't have, a world where this was normal, where this was theirs. Eventually, Maya stirred, her breathing evening out. She pulled back just enough to look at Clara, her eyes red-rimmed and exhausted. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Always," Clara replied, the word carrying the weight of 1,000 unspoken promises. Maya slowly disentangled herself and stood up, looking unsteady on her feet. She walked toward her bedroom, her shoulders slumped in defeat. Clara's heart ached to see her so broken. She stayed on the couch, listening to the soft sounds of Maya moving around in her room, the closing of a drawer, the rustle of fabric. The silence stretched, and Clara assumed Maya had finally gone to sleep, succumbing to emotional exhaustion. She was just about to get up and head to her own room when Maya's door creaked open again. Maya stood in the hallway, a small, hesitant figure wrapped in an oversized t-shirt that served as her pajamas. She was hugging her pillow to her chest like a shield. "Clara." Her voice was small, fragile. "Yeah." Clara sat up straighter, her entire being on high alert. Maya took a tentative step into the living room. She wouldn't meet Clara's eyes, focusing instead on a spot on the floor. "I know this is weird," she began, her voice barely audible. "But my room, it just feels so empty." And cold, she finally lifted her gaze, and the vulnerability in her eyes made Clara's breath hitch. I miss falling asleep next to someone." The words hung in the air between them, charged and delicate. Clara's mind raced. Next to someone. Not next to Liam. Just someone. It was a subtle but crucial distinction. Before Clara could formulate a response, could even process the tidal wave of hope and fear crashing through her, Maya took another step. "Can I?" She hesitated, biting her lip. "Can I sleep in here tonight? With you? Your bed is bigger." The world tilted on its axis. It was a simple question, born of loneliness and distress. A request for comfort from a friend. But for Clara, it was a cataclysm. It was a line she had never dared to imagine crossing. The space between them, the carefully maintained boundary of their friendship, suddenly felt paper-thin, ready to be torn apart by a single word. Hope, a terrifying and treacherous creature, began to unfurl its wings in her chest. "Yes," Clara said, her voice sounding strange and distant to her own ears. "Of course." The first night was an exercise in torturous self-control. Clara lay ramrod straight on her side of the queen-sized bed, her muscles clenched so tightly they ached. The space between her and Maya felt both like a vast, empty chasm and a dangerously narrow ledge. She could feel the heat radiating from Maya's body, could hear the soft, even rhythm of her breathing as she quickly succumbed to an exhausted sleep. Clara, however, was painfully, electrifyingly awake. She spent hours staring at the shifting patterns the streetlights made on her ceiling, cataloging every sensation. The slight dip in the mattress from Maya's weight. The scent of her shampoo on the pillow next to hers. The whisper-soft sound of fabric as Maya shifted in her sleep. It was an assault on her senses, overwhelming her carefully constructed defenses. She felt like a starving person forced to sit before a banquet, forbidden to touch a single bite. Her own bed, her sanctuary, had become a landscape of temptation and longing. She didn't sleep until the first gray light of dawn was filtering through the blinds, and even then, it was a fitful, dream-haunted rest. It happened again 2 nights later. There was no dramatic fight this time, just a quiet, melancholic evening spent watching an old movie. Liam had sent a barrage of apologetic texts, which Maya had read with a flat, emotionless expression before setting her phone face down on the coffee table. When the movie ended, she didn't get up. She just looked at Clara, a silent question in her eyes. "My room again?" Clara asked softly, her heart beginning its familiar, frantic beat. Maya nodded, a small, grateful smile touching her lips. "If that's okay." It was always okay. It would always be okay. Clara knew she would let Maya dismantle her life piece by piece if it meant having her close. This time was different. The initial awkwardness had lessened, replaced by a tentative comfort. They lay on their respective sides, but the space between them had shrunk. After a few minutes of silence, Maya spoke, her voice a soft murmur in the darkness. "Do you think love is supposed to be this much work?" The question was a conversational grenade, tossed casually into the intimate space they shared. Clara's throat went dry. "What kind of work?" she asked, stalling, trying to navigate the minefield. "The kind that feels like you're constantly trying to translate yourself for someone," Maya explained. "Like you're handing them a manual on how to be with you, and they just skim the pictures. I feel like I'm always explaining, always justifying why I feel the way I do. With Liam, it's exhausting. It shouldn't be that hard, should it? To just be seen?" "I see you," Clara screamed internally. "I see every single part of you." Out loud, she said, "No. I don't think it should be." She chose her next words carefully, her voice barely a whisper. I think it should feel easy. Like coming home. You shouldn't have to fight to be understood by the person who's supposed to know you best." There was a long pause. Clara could hear the frantic pounding of her own heart in the silence. Then, she felt a slight shift in the bed. "You always get it," Maya whispered. Her voice was closer now. Clara realized Maya had rolled over to face her. The impulse to do the same was so strong it was a physical force, a magnetic pull. She resisted, keeping her back to Maya, afraid of what she might see in Maya's eyes, or what Maya might see in hers. "I'm just a good listener," Clara deflected, the old, familiar lie feeling flimsy and worn. "No, it's more than that," Maya insisted. "With you it's... I don't know. It's like I don't need the manual. You just know." A shiver traced its way down Clara's spine. The air grew thick with unspoken things. She felt Maya's hand, warm and hesitant, come to rest on her shoulder. The touch was light, barely there, but it sent a shockwave through Clara's entire body. It was the first time Maya had initiated contact like this in the bed, a deliberate, conscious touch that wasn't accidental or born of seeking comfort in a hug. It was just a touch. Clara's breath hitched. She couldn't speak, couldn't move. Her entire universe had shrunk to that single point of contact, the gentle pressure of Maya's palm on her shoulder. Maya's fingers began to move, tracing a slow, absent-minded pattern on the fabric of Clara's pajama shirt. It was a soothing, hypnotic gesture that was simultaneously setting every one of Clara's nerves on fire. Did she know what she was doing? Did she have any idea that this simple, friendly act of comfort was unraveling years of Clara's carefully guarded secrets? "Clara." Maya's voice was sleepy now, drifting toward the edge of consciousness. Was all Clara could manage, her own voice tight. "Thanks for being my friend." The words were a gut punch. Friend. Of course. That's all this was. Comfort between friends. Clara's soaring hope crashed back to earth, its wings broken. The pain was sharp, immediate. A knife turning in an old wound. Anytime, she managed to choke out. The tracing on her shoulder stopped as Maya's breathing deepened into the slow, steady rhythm of sleep. But Clara lay awake for hours, the ghost of that touch burning into her skin, the word friend echoing in the silent, lonely chambers of her heart. The escalation was a sweet poison, drawing her in deeper, making the inevitable fall that much more devastating. And yet, she knew, with a certainty that frightened her, that if Maya asked again tomorrow night, she would say yes. She would walk into the fire every single time. The shared nights became a fragile routine, an unspoken agreement that took root in the fertile ground of Maya's unhappiness and Clara's devotion. It was no longer just after fights with Liam. Sometimes it was after a long day at work or on a lazy Sunday morning when neither of them wanted to leave the cocoon of blankets. The geography of the bed shifted. The vast chasm between them slowly eroded, the invisible dividing line dissolving night by night. It started with small, unconscious encroachments. A foot brushing against a leg in the night. Waking up to find their hands resting inches apart on the mattress. Then, one morning, Clara woke with a start, her body rigid. Maya was curled against her back, her arm draped loosely over Clara's waist, her face nestled in the space between her shoulder blades. Her soft, even breaths ghosted across Clara's neck. Clara lay perfectly still, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She was terrified to move, to breathe, to do anything that might break the spell. She stayed that way for nearly an hour, memorizing the gentle weight of Maya's arm, the warmth that seeped through her shirt, until the alarm on her phone shattered the perfect, agonizing stillness. Maya had pulled away with a sleepy murmur, seemingly oblivious, but for Clara a line had been crossed. The world had irrevocably changed. Their late-night conversations deepened, becoming more intimate and philosophical. They spoke in hushed tones, the darkness of the room a confessional booth. "Sometimes I feel like I'm playing a part," Maya admitted one night, her voice barely a whisper. "The girlfriend, I know the lines. I know what I'm supposed to want, how I'm supposed to feel. But it all feels hollow. Like I'm watching someone else's life and just waiting for the credits to roll." Clara's chest ached with empathy. "Maybe it's not your movie," she suggested softly. Maya was quiet for a long moment. "What if I don't know what my movie is?" "Then you get to write it," Clara said, the words feeling brave and true in the dark. "You can cast whoever you want." The physical contact, too, grew bolder, blurring the lines between platonic and something more. While watching movies on the couch, Maya would now rest her head in Clara's lap. The first time it happened, Clara had frozen, her hands hovering awkwardly in the air before she'd tentatively, carefully, lowered them to Maya's hair. It was as soft as she had always imagined. She'd spent the next 2 hours carting her fingers through the silky strands, her touch gentle and reverent, every nerve ending alight. Maya had sighed in contentment and closed her eyes, completely at ease, while Clara felt like her entire body was humming with a dangerous, beautiful electricity. Then came the hand-holding. It was accidental at first. They were walking home from the grocery store, their arms laden with bags. Their hands brushed, and then, somehow, their fingers were intertwined. Neither of them acknowledged it. They just kept walking, their linked hands silent, shocking confessions swinging between them. Clara's palm was sweating, her pulse was racing, but she didn't let go. She couldn't. It felt like holding a captured star, something too bright and precious to ever release. When they got to their apartment door and had to fumble for keys, they finally pulled apart, and the sudden coldness in Clara's hand felt like a profound loss. Clara began to notice a change in the way Maya looked at her. It was subtle, easy to miss if you weren't looking, but Clara was always looking. Maya's gaze would soften when Clara was talking, a fond, gentle expression that made Clara's stomach swoop. And then there were the other looks, the ones that made Clara's breath catch. Moments when Maya would be watching her, a strange, unreadable intensity in her eyes. Once, as Clara was laughing at something on TV, she'd turned and caught Maya staring, her gaze fixed on Clara's mouth. It was only for a second. Maya had blinked and looked away, a faint blush creeping up her neck, but the image was seared into Clara's memory. It was a seed of hope, planted in the barren soil of her heart, and she was terrified of what might grow. One rainy Tuesday, Maya came home from work looking pale and drawn. She dropped her keys on the counter with a clatter and announced to the quiet apartment, "I did it. I ended it with Liam." Clara, who had been reading at the kitchen table, looked up in shock. She had been expecting it, waiting for it, for months. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times. She thought she would feel a rush of triumphant joy, a surge of relief. Instead, all she felt was a profound, stomach-churning anxiety. The obstacle was gone. The final barrier, the convenient excuse that had kept their relationship neatly defined, had been removed. And the silence it left behind was deafening. Maya didn't seem heartbroken. She didn't even seem particularly sad. She just looked lost, adrift. It was surprisingly easy, she said, her voice distant. Like I was just closing a book I'd already finished. There was nothing left to say. She walked over to the window and stared out at the rain-streaked street. I should be crying, right? I should feel something. But I just feel quiet. Clara stood up and walked over to stand beside her. She didn't touch her, just offered her presence as a silent anchor. "It's okay to not feel what you think you're supposed to feel," she said gently. Maya turned to her, and her eyes were filled with a terrifying, raw confusion. "Then what am I supposed to feel, Clara? What happens now?" The question hung between them, heavy and unanswered. The escalation had reached its peak. They were standing at the edge of a cliff, the familiar ground of their friendship crumbling behind them, and a vast, unknown territory stretching out before them. Clara didn't know what happened now. All she knew was that she was more terrified than she had ever been in her life. Because for the first time in 2 years, 4 months, and 27 days, there was a very real, very frightening possibility that the counting might finally, truly, be about to stop. The days following Maya's breakup with Liam were stranger than any that had come before. A new kind of silence settled over the apartment, one that was not comfortable but stretched taut with unspoken tension. Maya was adrift, floating through their shared spaces with a bewildering mix of relief and profound confusion. She stopped sleeping in Clara's bed. The sudden return to their separate rooms felt like a regression, a retreat to opposite ends of a battlefield after a temporary truce. The absence of Maya's warmth beside her at night left Clara's bed feeling unnervingly vast and cold. The loss was an ache that settled deep in her bones. Maya grew distant, quiet. She would start to say something, then stop, shaking her head as if to clear it. She avoided Clara's gaze, and the easy physical affection that had blossomed between them, the lingering touches, the casual hugs, vanished completely. It felt like a punishment, and Clara couldn't understand what she had done wrong. The hope that had begun to bloom in her chest withered, and a familiar, chilling fear took its place. She had been a comfort, a temporary safe harbor during the storm of Maya's failing relationship. Now that the storm had passed, perhaps her purpose was served. The thought was a shard of ice in her heart. Clara, in turn, retreated into herself. The pain of Maya's withdrawal was too acute, too raw. She buried herself in work, stayed late at the library, and took to wearing headphones around the apartment, creating a bubble of sound to protect herself from the crushing silence. She was hiding. Hiding from the questions in Maya's eyes, hiding from the yawning chasm that had opened between them, hiding from the devastating possibility that she had misread everything. After nearly a week of this silent, painful dance, things came to a head. Clara was in the kitchen, carefully measuring coffee grounds into the filter, her back to the room. She was so lost in her own miserable thoughts that she didn't hear Maya come in. "We need to talk." Maya's voice, quiet but firm, cut through the air. Clara flinched, her hand jerking and sending a dusting of dark grounds across the white countertop. She didn't turn around. She couldn't. "Okay," she said, her voice tight, focusing intently on wiping up the mess with a damp paper towel. "No, not okay," Maya said, her frustration evident. "Look at me, Clara." Slowly, reluctantly, Clara turned. Maya was standing by the kitchen island, her arms crossed over her chest, her expression a mixture of hurt and determination. The distance between them felt immense. "You've been avoiding me," Maya stated, not as a question, but as a fact. "You've been hiding from me for a week, and I want to know why." The directness of the accusation stole the air from Clara's lungs. Her carefully constructed walls were being battered down. "I haven't been," she lied weakly, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. "Don't," Maya said, her voice softening slightly, but her gaze unwavering. "Please don't lie to me." "Not you." The implied trust in those words was more painful than the accusation. "Something shifted between us after I broke up with Liam, and you just disappeared. It's like you built a wall around yourself overnight." "Did I do something? Did I cross a line by sleeping in your room?" "I'm sorry if I did, she trailed off, looking lost again. "I needed you." Clara's heart twisted. "I'm still here. I'm dying right in front of you." "It's not you," Clara whispered, her eyes fixed on the floor. "It's me." "Then tell me," Maya pressed, taking a step closer. The proximity was dizzying. "What is it? What aren't you telling me?" This was it. The point of no return. The precipice she had been standing on for years. She could retreat, make up an excuse, and preserve the fragile shell of their friendship, condemning herself to this quiet suffering forever. Or she could jump. The silence stretched, thick and heavy with years of unspoken feelings. Clara's secret felt like a physical weight in her chest, a stone that was making it hard to breathe. Finally, it was Maya who broke the silence, her voice dropping to a near whisper, full of a dawning, terrifying realization. "It's about Liam, isn't it? Not the breakup." But before, she took another step, closing the distance between them until only a few feet remained. "All those nights. All those conversations. Me complaining about him. You listening." Clara couldn't speak. She just gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. Maya's expression changed, the frustration melting away, replaced by a profound, searching confusion. "Since I ended it with him," she began, her voice hesitant, as if she were thinking the words aloud for the first time, "I haven't felt sad about losing him. I've just felt confused. About everything. I thought breaking up would make things clearer, but it's only made them more complicated. Because the one thing I was sure of, the one person I wanted to talk to about it, was you. And that didn't make any sense." She looked at Clara, her eyes wide and searching, pleading for an answer. "I kept thinking about what you said, about love feeling like coming home. I've never felt that. Not with Liam. Not with anyone." Her gaze intensified. "But when I was with you, lying next to you in the dark, talking about nothing. That felt more like home than any place I've ever been. Clara's heart felt like it was going to beat its way out of her chest. She could see the pieces clicking into place behind Maya's eyes, the dawning of a truth she wasn't yet ready to name. Maybe, Maya whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Maybe I've been looking for the wrong things in all the wrong people. Her gaze dropped to Clara's lips, just for a second, the same way it had before, but this time it was deliberate, questioning. The air crackled with electricity. Clara, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I have to be honest, and this is going to sound crazy, and maybe I'm wrong, but for the past few weeks, I've been thinking about what it would be like to kiss you. The confession hung in the air, a beautiful, terrifying thing. It wasn't a declaration of love, not yet. It was something more fragile, more honest. A confession of a possibility, a question she was asking both Clara and herself. It was the pre-confession, the final, shuddering breath before the plunge. And in that moment, Clara knew that whether she fell or flew, she had to jump. The ground she was standing on was already gone. Maya's words echoed in the sudden, ringing silence of the kitchen. I've been thinking about what it would be like to kiss you. It was a key turning in a lock that Clara had long thought rusted shut. The air vibrated with the admission, a fragile bridge of honesty built across the chasm that had separated them. Clara felt tears well in her eyes, hot and sudden. They weren't tears of sadness, but of a relief so profound it was physically painful. It was the feeling of a pressure valve being released after years of being tightened to the breaking point. You have. Clara's voice was a choked whisper, barely audible. Maya nodded, her own eyes shining with unshed tears. She took the final step, closing the space between them. She was so close now that Clara could feel the warmth radiating from her, could see the intricate flecks of gold in her irises, could smell the faint scent of lavender that always clung to her skin. Is that crazy? Maya asked, her voice trembling with vulnerability. Am I crazy for thinking that? No, Clara breathed, a single tear tracing a hot path down her cheek. Or if you are, we're crazy together. A look of stunning, dawning comprehension washed over Maya's face. It was the look of someone finding the last piece of a puzzle they had been working on their entire life. Oh, she whispered, a world of understanding packed into that single syllable. Oh, Clara, her hands came up to cup Clara's face, her thumbs gently stroking her cheekbones, wiping away the tear. The touch was exquisitely gentle, a stark contrast to the hurricane of emotion raging inside Clara. You too. The question was so simple, so direct. It demanded the whole truth, a truth Clara had guarded for 895 days. The counting was over. Maya, Clara said, her voice breaking on a sob she could no longer contain. I think I'm falling in love with you. The confession felt clumsy, inadequate. It was like trying to describe the sun with a single word. Maya's expression softened into one of breathtaking tenderness. A small, sad, beautiful smile touched her lips. Falling, she whispered, her thumbs still tracing patterns on Clara's skin. Clara, I feel like I've been in freefall for months, and I just realized there's no ground. The dam of Clara's composure finally, completely broke. Months, she laughed, a wet, incredulous sound. Try 2 years, 4 months, and 34 days, the precision of it, the sheer weight of all that counted time, hung in the air between them. Maya's eyes widened, the reality of Clara's long-hidden devotion sinking in. She looked stunned, humbled, and overwhelmed all at once. All this time, she breathed. All those times I complained about Liam, you were, oh, Clara. I'm so sorry. Don't be, Clara said, shaking her head, her hands coming up to rest on Maya's wrists. Don't be sorry. Just be here. Now. The world seemed to slow down. The hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of traffic, it all faded away into a muted background hum. All that existed was the space between them, the connection thrumming through their points of contact. Maya's gaze was intense, searching Clara's face as if seeing it for the very first time. Her eyes dropped once more to Clara's lips, and this time, they stayed there. Clara. Maya's voice was a mere thread of sound, husky with emotion. Can I kiss you? The question was a gift. It was permission. It was a recognition of everything that had been held back, everything that was about to be unleashed. Clara couldn't find her voice, so she just nodded, a convulsive, desperate movement. Maya leaned in slowly, giving Clara every opportunity to pull away, to stop it. But Clara was rooted to the spot, her entire being straining toward Maya like a flower to the sun. The first brush of their lips was impossibly soft, tentative, a whisper of contact. It was a question asked and answered in the same moment. It was pure, unadulterated wonder. Clara's eyes fluttered shut, and she let out a shaky breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Then Maya's hand slid from Clara's cheek to the back of her neck, her fingers tangling in the short hairs there, and she tilted Clara's head, deepening the kiss. All the hesitation, all the fear and uncertainty that had plagued them for weeks melted away in an instant, replaced by a surge of desperate, undeniable rightness. This was not the clumsy, questioning kiss of a first-time experiment. This was a kiss of recognition, of coming home. It was years of pent-up longing, of silent pining, of unspoken truths finally finding a voice. It was hungry and soft, urgent and gentle all at once. Clara's hands moved from Maya's wrists to her waist, pulling her closer until there was no space left between them, their bodies flush against each other. It felt like the end of a long, arduous journey. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathless, their chests rising and falling in unison. They didn't move away, instead resting their foreheads together, sharing the same air. Clara's eyes remained closed, trying to commit every single sensation to memory. The softness of Maya's lips, the feeling of her fingers in her hair, the frantic, mirrored beat of their hearts. "Oh," Maya breathed out, the word a puff of warm air against Clara's lips. "Wow." Clara opened her eyes. Maya's were already open, inches from hers, dark and deep and filled with a dawning, brilliant joy. "That felt..." Maya started, then stopped, searching for the right word. "Right," Clara finished for her, her voice full of a certainty she had never known before. "It felt right." "Yeah," Maya whispered, a slow, radiant smile spreading across her face. "Right." She leaned in and kissed her again, a soft, sure kiss of affirmation, a seal on a promise that had just been made. It was the beginning of everything. The aftershocks of the kiss lingered in the air, a shimmering, palpable energy. They stood in the kitchen, foreheads still pressed together, their breathing slowly returning to normal. The world outside the small circle of their embrace had ceased to exist. For Clara, it felt as though a lifetime of tension had drained out of her, leaving behind a fragile, trembling sense of peace. But beneath that peace, a new feeling was taking root, a quiet, creeping terror. "I'm so scared," Maya whispered, as if reading Clara's mind. Her voice was small, a stark contrast to the certainty of their kiss. The admission was a relief. "Me too," Clara confessed, her own voice barely a whisper. "I'm terrified." She pulled back just enough to look into Maya's eyes, needing to see that they were in this together. "What does this mean? What are we doing?" Maya's hands, which were still cradling Clara's face, tightened their grip slightly, a reassuring pressure. "I have no idea," she admitted with a shaky laugh. "But for the first time in a long time, not knowing feels okay. As long as I'm figuring it out with you." The sincerity in her voice was a balm to Clara's frayed nerves. This wasn't a fleeting moment of confusion for Maya, it was a genuine, seismic shift. Maya's gaze turned introspective, her eyes clouding over as she processed the cascade of revelations. "It's all so clear now," she said, more to herself than to Clara. "All those months, complaining about Liam. I would tell you what was missing, what I wanted, what I needed from him." She met Clara's eyes, a look of profound realization dawning on her face. "I wasn't just venting, Clara. I was describing you." The words struck Clara with the force of a physical blow, knocking the last of the air from her lungs. "Every time I felt unseen by him," Maya continued, her voice gaining strength with her conviction, "I was thinking about how you always notice when I get a haircut or when I'm wearing a new shirt. Every time I was frustrated that he didn't listen, I was remembering how you can recall some stupid, offhand comment I made weeks ago. I was measuring every relationship, Every interaction, against what I had with you, and they all came up short. She shook her head in disbelief. God, I was so blind. I was in love with my best friend, and I was the last person to know. Clara's heart swelled, the ache of her long-held secret finally being replaced by the warmth of being truly, completely seen. All the pain, all the lonely nights, all the moments of quiet desperation, they had all led here, to this moment of stunning, mutual clarity. I wasn't blind, Clara corrected gently. I was just really good at hiding. Too good, Maya said, her expression turning serious. Promise me something. Anything. No more hiding. From now on, whatever we're feeling, whatever we're scared of, we talk about it. We don't let silence build walls between us again. Okay, Clara agreed immediately, the word a solemn vow. The memory of the past week's painful distance was still fresh, a wound she never wanted to reopen. They stood there for another long moment, simply absorbing the new reality of their world. The familiar landscape of their friendship had been redrawn, its borders erased, its territories completely new and uncharted. It was frightening, yes, but it was also exhilarating. So, Clara said, a tentative smile playing on her lips. What now? Maya's answering smile was bright and full of a newfound confidence. Now, she said, leaning in to press a soft, lingering kiss to Clara's lips, I think you make us some of that coffee you were about to make before I so rudely interrupted you. She pulled back, her eyes sparkling. And then we sit down and we figure out how to go on a first date with someone you've already lived with for 3 years. The suggestion was so normal, so wonderfully, beautifully mundane, that Clara laughed, a real, unburdened laugh that felt like it came from a place deep inside her that had been silent for too long. The fear hadn't vanished entirely, but it had receded, replaced by a current of pure, unadulterated hope. They would take it one day at a time. They would talk, they would be honest, and they would figure it out together. That was more than enough. It was everything. 3 months later, the world had settled into a new, beautiful rhythm. The apartment, once a stage for quiet angst and unspoken longing, was now a sanctuary of soft mornings and easy intimacy. The fear and uncertainty of those first few days had given way to a deep, comfortable certainty, a love that felt both thrillingly new and as ancient as their friendship. Clara awoke to the smell of coffee and the warm weight of Maya's arm slung across her waist. She blinked her eyes open, the morning light filtering softly through the blinds, casting stripes across the familiar comforter of her, their bed. She turned her head on the pillow to find Maya watching her, a sleepy, contented smile on her face. Morning, Maya whispered, her voice husky with sleep. She leaned in and kissed Clara, a slow, tender kiss that tasted of coffee and home. Morning, Clara murmured back, her heart doing a familiar, happy little flip. You've been awake long. Long enough to watch you sleep for a bit, Maya admitted without a trace of embarrassment. It's my new favorite hobby. She brushed a stray piece of hair from Clara's forehead, her touch gentle and sure. It's weird, isn't it? How this feels like the most normal thing in the world. It's not weird at all, Clara said, snuggling closer into Maya's embrace. It's just, right? They lay there for a few more minutes, wrapped in a comfortable silence, until the need for caffeine finally pulled them from the warmth of the bed. In the kitchen, they moved around each other with an effortless, practiced grace, a dance they had perfected over years of being roommates, but which was now imbued with a new, loving tenderness. Clara poured the coffee while Maya pulled out the ingredients for pancakes, a Sunday morning tradition they had started on what they now called their first date/staying-in weekend. As Maya whisked the batter, she hummed that same off-key tune she always did when she was concentrating. The sound used to be a secret, precious thing Clara would treasure. Now it was just part of the beautiful, ordinary soundtrack of their life together. Clara came up behind her, wrapping her arms around Maya's waist and resting her chin on her shoulder, watching her hands work. You know, Clara said softly, her lips close to Maya's ear, I still can't believe this is real sometimes. Maya stopped whisking and leaned back into Clara's embrace, her body relaxing completely. She turned her head, her cheek brushing against Clara's. I know what you mean. The other day I found that green dress, the one I bought for my anniversary with Liam. A flicker of the old ache, a ghost of a memory, passed through Clara, but it was gone as quickly as it came. I almost threw it out, Maya continued. But then I stopped. Because that dress isn't about him anymore. It's about the night you held me while I cried. It's about the beginning of us. So I'm keeping it. I'm going to wear it for you. On a night that's actually worth celebrating. She turned fully in Clara's arms, her expression serious and full of a love that still took Clara's breath away. You rewrote my memories, Clara. You took all the sad, empty moments and you filled them with meaning. Tears pricked at Clara's eyes. You built a whole new world for me, she countered, her voice thick. One where I didn't have to hide. They stood in the middle of their sun-drenched kitchen, the forgotten pancake batter on the counter, simply holding each other. It was in these quiet, mundane moments that the truth of their love felt most profound. It wasn't in grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was in the shared coffee, the off-key humming, the rewriting of painful memories into a shared history of love and healing. Maya pulled back slightly, her eyes crinkling at the corners as she smiled. I'm so glad I was a complete mess that one night. Clara laughed, the sound bright and clear. Me too. And I'm so glad I asked to sleep in your bed, Maya added, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. It was a very good question, Clara agreed, her heart full to bursting. She leaned in, capturing Maya's lips in a soft, sweet kiss. It was a kiss that held no desperation, no fear, no uncertainty. It was a kiss of pure, unadulterated joy, a promise of 1,000 more Sunday mornings just like this one. She understood now that the greatest love stories weren't always the ones that started with a spark. Sometimes they started with a slow, steady burn, a friendship that quietly, patiently, waited for its moment to catch fire. And sometimes, the bravest thing you could ever do was not to leap off a cliff, but to simply turn to the person next to you in the dark and admit that you were afraid to be alone. She was home. They both were, finally and completely, exactly where they needed to be.